Now that we're in the studio, we can take a closer look at what I did to this knife. And we'll start off with the scales. And I used the Red Canyon Richlight. I love how deep and dark this red is. Almost a maroon or burgundy. I gave it a micro swirl finish. You guys can see right there in the light. I could have gave it a satin finish or a polished finish, but I really like this micro swirl finish. Just gives it a little bit more grip and just something for the light to kind of bounce off of. Now these grooves are really interesting to create, but we'll take a closer look at the scales once I assemble this thing. I also etched and stonewashed the liners, and you always get a different look on the liners, but the main focus was to get the edges of the liners a nice stonewashed finish, since everything else will be covered. And then of course I had to do the rock pattern texture on this blade, since this is the Spyderco Rock, R-O-C, and what better way to complement it with that really cool texture. Now, as you guys saw in the beginning of the video, it was a cleaver style blade, but I am a sucker for a harpoon, so I had to incorporate it into this one. I maybe wish I brought it a little further back, but it still has that mean, aggressive look. And then I created a swedge with my grinder, but it wasn't perfect. And the only way I could really get around it or fix it was to bring that rock pattern texture on top of the swedge and into the flat of the blade, which I think looks really good. Definitely gives you a little taste of what's going on top. I really love how the etch and stonewash came out. Usually it's pretty hard to get a good etch and stonewash, but this VG10 from Spyderco cooperated with me. I also continued that rock pattern texture onto the bottom side of the blade. Now I really made sure not to affect the stop pin sections. And if you do end up doing texture, make sure to focus on where the stop pins are touching, because if you don't, you'll end up with a knife in your collection like me that doesn't work properly. So just keep that in mind. I also gave it a aggressive cutting edge. I like for my cutting edges to bite a little bit, so that's what I did with this one. And last thing I did was I put a 600 grit finish with my Dremel on the inside of the Spidey hole, just to kind of give it some flair and make it pop a little bit. Now I went ahead and borrowed a Kaiser Momo pocket clip. This was coated black, but I stripped it of the coating, stonewashed it, and then gave it a golden anode to match the brass backspacer. I'll show you that in just a moment. And I like that the hardware is hidden, so you have a really clean pocket clip, and we'll focus more on that once it's assembled as well. And to complement the golden colors, I also heat anodized the hardware a nice golden hue. You can see there I put a 320 finish, so that in the light it does have a reflective, almost a holographic look to it. And I just like how that looks. I like doing this a lot on my hardware. It even looks good without it being heat anodized. Now this backspacer is my first attempt at doing it this way. So I didn't have enough material, or the thickness of material of the Richlight, because I was just going to do Richlight backspacer, but I figured why don't I just thin 2 pieces of that Richlight and then sandwich a 1/16 inch piece of brass in between, just to give it some clash. And I think it came out really good, but we'll look at that when it is installed too. And before we assemble it, I quickly want to mention that there were 3 standoffs on this knife and a lanyard tube, but I just got rid of the lanyard tube and the 3rd standoff because it really wasn't necessary, and I knew I was going to make a backspacer, so that is what I did. Enough talking about it, let's put this thing together and see what it looks like. Here it is all assembled. Again, really pleased with how this turned out. I'll give you guys a close-up of it closed. So here is the show side scale. Here is the pocket clip side. Again, with the hardware being hidden, keeps that pocket clip really, really clean. Here is the back spacer. Really happy with how this turned out. Again, this was my first attempt at doing something like this, so surprisingly easy, just a lot more time consuming since you have 3 pieces. Definitely worth it. And of course added that rock pattern texture to it to match the spine of the blade. And it dances in the light. Let's check it out opened up. So there it is with that new Harpoon sheep's foot style blade. And here's the pocket clip side. Overall, I just really like how dark everything is except for the gold. Again, just gives it more attention. And when you choke up, you can really get behind that harpoon. So I love that your thumb can just land right in that spot. I was going to do the material cutout here for the liner lock access, but I went ahead and kept the same amount of material as the pocket clip side, or where the liner lock side is, just to continue that nice flow and shape. That way you just don't have a little bump here. And I did remove a little bit of material underneath the scale so that you have plenty of access to that liner lock. So again, just keeping that flow nice and clean. This is not riding on bearings, but it is glassy smooth. And I did mess with the pivot to allow you to reverse flick it, or even use your thumb to flick it out. Even though I messed up right there, but it is smooth. As always, please let me know down below what you think. I always appreciate your guys' input. Quickly want to mention the underside of that back spacer. Even though it's not seen, you still get that rock pattern texture. I continued it all the way around the back spacer. Now, the most challenging part of this build was creating these grooves on the scales. Now, I went ahead and put some guidelines, as you guys saw in the customization part of the video, just so I don't get off track with it. I got them as close as I possibly could, as you can see right there. And then here on the top. Actually feels really, really good in hand. Ergos are really good on this knife, even before I customized it. So, really, really like that. And these certain sections really allow you to kind of grip or squeeze around the handles more. And just a little more unique in hand, rather than having those 2 slabs of black G10. Now, the tricky part was getting this beveled edge to be the same thickness, since this does drop down, but I was able to take my time and really get it done. And that's the beauty of doing things by hand. You can really take your time and get things exactly where you want them to be. Definitely time consuming, but totally worth it. And of course, I had to make sure this thing was perfectly centered. So you guys can see right there, I got it spot on. That's one thing I really focus on when I customize a pocket knife, is to make sure it is perfectly centered. And just so you guys know, this will be up for sale on my site, hopefully after this video. So if you guys are interested, you can pick it up from my site. And of course, I'll leave the link to my site down below in the description. As always, thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate the support. And I will see you guys on the next one.